PD setting. One of the more subtle but deeply problematic patterns that can emerge when an older man enters a relationship with a younger woman is the tendency to project his nostalgia onto her future. It's not always conscious. In fact, most of the time, it hides in plain sight, framed as admiration, curiosity, or even protectiveness. But if you look closely, often stems from something unresolved in a longing for youth, a yearning for second chances, or an H for the roads not taken. And when that longing becomes the lens through which he sees her, the relationship begins to lose its clarity and integrity. You see, nostalgia is seductive, paints the past in warmer hues than it probably deserved. It makes the mistakes look like lessons, the heartbreaks look like poetry, and the cows look like freedom. And when a man reaches a stage in life where the weight of decisions has settled on his shoulders, career paths chosen, relationships lost, identities forged, there can be a silent craving to go back. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, to relive, re-experience, or maybe even reclaim something he feels slipped through his fingers. Enter the young woman. Full of life, ambition, uncertainty. She's still figuring things out. She holds possibilities in her hands like they're petals not yet plucked. To the older man, she doesn't just represent beauty or energy. She represents a portal, a chance to touch youth again. But here's where it becomes dangerous. The moment he stops seeing her for who she is and starts using her as a vessel for what he used to be. This projection can start innocently enough. He offers advice, drawing from his past. He tries to steer her away from mistakes he made. He reminisces about his own 20s, not just as memories, but as a template. He wants to relive his old chapters through her new beginnings. And it can feel flattering at first. This attention, this guidance, this sense that he's invested. Over time, it can begin to feel like a quiet theft, because she's no longer living her story. She's becoming a character in his rewrite. That's the heart of the issue. When a relationship becomes a reenactment, it loses its authenticity. Instead of nurturing her self-discovery, he begins to narrate her direction. Instead of holding space for her growth, he overlays it with the script of his past. And that script, no matter how wise or well-intentioned, was not written for her. It cannot account for the cultural shifts, the psychological evolution, or the unique inner world that she's navigating now. The truth is, trying to relive your youth through someone else's present isn't romantic. It's regressive. It places a weight on her that isn't hers to carry. She's not your second chance. She's not your redemption arc. She's not a living symbol of what could have been. She is a person with her own timeline, her own instincts, her own journey. And when you impose your past onto her potential, you don't just limit her. You distort her. There's also a kind of emotional colonization that takes place here. Because underneath the projection is often a silent entitlement. I've lived more. I know better. I should be listened to. And that can create an imbalance where her desires feel immature and his regrets become guiding principles. Her 20s are not a correctional facility for your missteps. They are sacred years of self-construction, not reconstruction. What makes this even more complex is that she might genuinely be drawn to his wisdom. She might even ask for it. That's human. There's a difference between sharing perspective and rewriting someone's path. Wisdom should be offered like a mirror, not a mold. She needs reflection, redirection. Your past can inform, but it should never define her present. And here's the paradox. The more an older man projects his nostalgia, the more he actually loses the chance for something real. Because real intimacy doesn't exist in memory. It exists in presence. In witnessing someone as they are, not as you wish they could have been, not as a reanimation of a younger you. And when you show up fully for the person in front of you, without the burden of your unfinished stories, you make space for something much richer, connection rooted in reality, not reminiscence. Ask yourself, are you seeing her, or are you seeing yourself in her? Are you holding her hand, or are you gripping your own youth a little too tightly? Because if you're using her life to relive your own, you're not loving her. You're recycling a fantasy. Fantasies by nature are not reciprocal. They serve one person, not two. True love, especially across generations, requires a radical kind of humility. It demands that you honor her journey without co-opting it. That you admire her youth without trying to possess it. That you recognize your own longing without using her to soothe it. It asks you to step out of the rearview mirror and sit fully in the passenger seat. Present, alert, and aware that this is her road, not your ruin. And in doing so, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing time, and you start sharing it. You stop trying to go back and you start going forward. With her, beside her, no ahead, not behind. Just there. Fully there. There's something that often gets overlooked in relationships between older men and younger women. And it's not about age or attraction. It's about what we give in place of what we feel. When an older man leans on material compensation, whether it's money, lifestyle, or status, to hold the relationship together, he's often avoiding the real emotional work that intimacy demands. And the most dangerous part, on the surface, it looks like generosity. It looks like provision. But underneath, it's a form of hiding, let's be honest. Emotional vulnerability is hard, especially for someone who's lived through life's disappointments, who's built defenses over time, who's been conditioned to show strength and self-reliance. And so instead of showing his inner world, the older man might default to what he knows is valued in the external world: success, security, experience, the symbols of having made it. And when those resources are poured into the relationship, there's a quiet hope that they will be enough. That she'll feel loved, taken care of. But that exchange, while comforting, is not intimacy. It's an emotional shortcut. And shortcuts, by nature, bypass depth. The young woman, especially if she's still finding her footing in the world, may initially feel grateful. Who wouldn't be drawn to a life that feels more stable, more curated, more protected? But over time, something shifts. What once felt like a gift begins to feel like a contract, is an unspoken expectation. Loyalty in return for comfort, gratitude in exchange for lifestyle. The relationship starts to carry an invisible price tag, and when that happens, the emotional space becomes transactional rather than transformational, no longer about who they are together. It's about what he gives and what she offers in return. This is where the imbalance grows, not just in resources, in emotional access. Because the man who leads with what he owns or provides often shields what he feels. He might believe his offerings are proof of love. Love isn't proven by material presence. It's revealed through emotional presence. And emotional presence means being seen in your rawness, your doubts, your insecurities. It means being able to say, I don't know, I'm scared, or I need you, without hiding behind the armor of what you can offer. When material compensation becomes the primary mode of connection, both people lose something essential. The older man loses the chance to be known beyond his achievements, and the younger woman loses the chance to love someone for who they are, just for what they provide. The relationship becomes performative. He performs strength, and she performs admiration. But behind those performances, neither one is truly held. Because intimacy doesn't happen through gifts, it happens through presence, through the hard conversations, the shared silences, the willingness to sit in uncertainty together without reaching for distraction or control. There's also a deeper psychological layer here. When a man continually gives in material ways, he may be compensating for emotional inadequacy, not because he doesn't feel deeply, but because he was never taught that emotional expression is masculine, that it's courageous to be vulnerable. Showing your inner world is not weakness, it's trust. And until that paradigm shifts, older men will keep defaulting to what's familiar: provision over connection, performance over presence. What often follows is resentment, quiet, creeping, and mutual. The man begins to feel unappreciated. He wonders if she's only there for what he offers. He questions her authenticity. And she, in turn, begins to feel owned, not loved. She feels seen as a recipient partner. Over time, even with all the comfort in the world, she starts to feel emotionally homeless, because she's living in a space built for her, not built with her. Relationships rooted in exchange are inherently fragile. The moment one party stops giving, or the other stops performing, the entire structure wobbles. But relationships rooted in mutual emotional investment, where both people show up as they are, stripped of titles and trophies, those are the ones that endure, because they're not built on what's given, but on what's shared. So what does it look like to stop using compensation as a crutch? It means daring to be emotionally generous. It means asking more questions than giving advice, listening instead of solving, being willing to receive love, not just provide it. And most of all, it means offering your truth, your fears, your longings, your past wounds, as openly as you offer your wallet or your status, because those are the real gifts. That's the currency of connection. And for the younger woman, it means recognizing the difference between being taken care of and being emotionally seen. It means understanding that real security doesn't come from what someone else gives you. It comes from being met, understood, and valued for your inner world, not just your outer potential. When both people stop trading and start revealing, something sacred opens up, a space where love is not earned or bought, it's cultivated, grown, made real through choice, not obligation. At its core, love is never about the things we give. It's about the parts of ourselves we're willing to share. It's about saying, I have all these things, yes. More than that, I have a heart. I have doubts. I have dreams that still scare me. And I want to bring those to you, not to impress you, to invite you into something real. There's a fourth mistake that often lurks beneath the surface in relationships between older men and younger women, and it's one that doesn't always look like a mistake at first. In fact, it often disguises itself as something positive: attention, guidance, involvement. If you peel back the layers, it becomes clear when an older man tries to shape, mold, or improve a younger woman to match his expectations. Even subtly, he begins to undermine the very essence of who she is. And he does it often, without realizing that he's erasing her in the process. This dynamic usually doesn't begin with control. It begins with admiration. She's different. She's vibrant. There's something about her that feels unpredictable, refreshing, even untamed. But over time, that very difference, the quality that drew him in, starts to feel like a challenge to his worldview. He's older. He's lived more. He's certain of what works and what doesn't. So naturally, he wants to help her become. And this is where it turns. Because the moment the focus shifts from discovering her to directing her, he's no longer in love with who she is. He's in love with who he believes she could become under his influence. And make no mistake, this is not the same as support. Support asks, how can I hold space for your growth? Control, however softly spoken, says, here's who I think you should be. One uplifts, the other subtly diminishes. And the danger is that it often looks like love. It looks like mentorship. It sounds like protection. It's packaged as wisdom. At its core, it's a quiet resistance to difference. A refusal to let her evolve on her own terms. Because to let someone evolve freely, you have to relinquish the need to shape the outcome. You have to make peace with unpredictability. And that, for many older men, is uncomfortable. There's also a psychological undercurrent that drives this behavior: the fear of irrelevance. When a man reaches a certain stage in life, he begins to notice the shifting tides of culture, technology, language, even values. The world no longer mirrors him as clearly as it once did, and being with a younger woman amplifies that contrast. So, without consciously intending to, he tries to close that gap, not by meeting her where she is, by pulling her into his world. He wants her to think like him, move like him, even desire the things he desires. Not necessarily because he thinks she's wrong, because he needs to feel right. He needs to feel useful. And shaping her offers the illusion of certainty. But here's the true thing. Real love doesn't need to be understood to be respected. You don't need to relate to someone fully to honor their process. You don't need to agree with every choice to support someone's freedom to choose. And when an older man allows a younger woman to grow without interruption, without trying to course correct her into his comfort zone, that's not weakness. Strength. That's maturity. That's love rooted not in ego, but in trust. Now, let's look at what happens on her side. The younger woman may initially welcome this guidance. She may appreciate the structure, the stability, the clarity he brings. But over time, she starts to feel it, this subtle pressure to measure up, to adapt, to shrink the parts of herself that are still forming so she doesn't seem nervy or reckless in his eyes. And the tragedy here is that her most important years of self-exploration are now spent second-guessing instead of self-creating. Instead of becoming more of herself, she becomes a curated version of herself, one that's easier to love, one that won't be questioned. And she begins to wonder, silently, if I truly outgrow this version, will he still want me? That inner conflict becomes exhausting, because even if he's kind and generous and full of affection, the message is clear. I'll love you more when you look a little more like me. And love, when it's conditional on similarity, stops being nourishing. It becomes performative. She performs the relationship. He performs approval. But neither one is actually connecting with what's real. It's two people acting out a script that slowly loses meaning with every scene. So what does the alternative look like? It looks like discomfort. Yes. It looks like the older man sitting in the tension of not knowing what she'll become. It looks like choosing to witness rather than instruct. It looks like asking questions instead of offering answers. And most importantly, it looks like staying present without trying to control the outcome. That's where love shifts from being a project to being a partnership. Letting go of the urge to shape someone isn't a loss of influence. It's the birth of trust. It means you're no longer in the relationship to prove something, fix something, or validate your worldview. You're there to experience, to witness, to grow right alongside her. And when that happens, age becomes irrelevant. What matters isn't who's older or younger. What matters is who's willing to show up day after day without needing to be right. That is love without possession. That is power without dominance. That is intimacy without ego.